Hi, my name is Brody Payne, and this is my presentation on AI face recognition techniques and its harmful effects on society. Now, privacy in the private sector, this is obviously a very big one as it involves the majority of normal people. Uh, and according to the govfacts.org, AI is being used by the private sector to quote unquote enhance customer experience. However, that's not usually the case. They say enhance customer experience by uh, making more targeted ads or more targeted political content, but they're instead selling a lot of the data, especially the facial data, to third parties, especially those in, say, India or China. The most notable example being obviously Facebook. They had a very large scandal a couple years ago, and I'd say they're still facing a bit of backlash to this day. Uh, However, it does get a lot messier whenever you take into account that in countries like America, who put a lot more power into the private sector due to it being a country fundamentally built on capitalism, a lot of people don't really question these kinds of things, not as much as they should. And they kind of either gloss over companies using like practices like this, using facial recognition technology, or they at the very least get over it very fast uh, due to people just kind of summing it up to being the competitive nature of capitalism. And here you can even see that to this day in this graph, more and more companies in the U.S. are filing for facial recognition patents, and more countries are trying to use this type of technology. Another big aspect of this type of topic is the law enforcement and the legal system and its uses in that. In 2023, it was shown that at least 7 agencies in the Department of Homeland Security and Justice claim to use facial recognition technology, with many of these agencies not even requiring proper training for this technology, which could lead to obviously a lot of mistakes. Now, that has changed in recent years, with a few more of these agencies do require proper training, but that is most likely due to the increasing complexity of this kind of technology and how it's still steadily evolving. So they need to try and keep up with that instead. And then, of course, in countries such as China and North Korea, where constant surveillance is pretty much the norm, uh, and evolution to this type of technology isn't really anything new. Uh, and I'm sure a lot of people there, while not happy about it, would probably just simply see it as not that morally different from what governments are already doing. They don't really see it as much of a moral like sin as countries like America would. Instead, they just kind of see it as the natural evolution of things. Then, of course, another very big aspect of this issue is the entertainment industry and its workers, such as actors, where movie studios are using footage of actors when they were younger and using this facial recognition technology to imprint their face on newer actors uh, to try and recreate old characters. A good example, obviously, is uh, Mark Hamill being used to recreate Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian. Another good example of someone just making themselves look younger in this photo. Uh, and then there's also, of course, with the Mark Hamill example, he gave full permission to do that. But in a lot of other studios, especially smaller studios that are more desperate to save money, cut corners, they will start using actors' likeness to recreate them in projects that those actors will not have any part in and have not given their permission, trying to cite, say, using contracts. Like they sign a contract, so they must be allowed to use it, when usually that's not able to hold up legally. But it's even worse when it is, especially in lots of the movie industry. Actors are seen more as tools for entertainment, not actual people with rights, unfortunately. Especially when things like contracts become involved, not only does it become a lot more morally messy, but it becomes a huge legal problem as well that a lot of actors still struggle with, especially when there was the writers' strike, writers and actors strike a few years ago over similar issues like this, where they weren't being paid enough for their work, or their work was being used by AI without their permission. Now, of course, these are just a few examples of issues with this type of technology. There's many more, much more nuance, and there's just a lot more to talk about. But I felt like those three were the biggest ones, the ones that concern the most, the average person. And these are my sources where I got my information on these topics from. And thank you very much for watching.